Welcome back to Scaling Through Structure. I've got an awesome guest today, Danny Nathan, founder of Apollo 21. Danny, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Why don't we start? Tell us about Apollo 21. What is it and why is it as awesome as it looks on your website?
I'm glad it at least looks awesome. Apollo 21 effectively sits at the intersection of a management consultancy, a product design studio, and a venture studio. And what I mean by that is we help clients, usually in the mid to enterprise size, build new products that fit within their existing portfolio, launch new ventures entirely if they're looking to pursue something that sits outside of kind of their existing core offering. And then we also help them establish internal venture building operations. So think, oh, okay, we launched something new once. Now we want to be able to do it again and again. And then we do bits and pieces of helping people solve operational challenges through technology as well. Help us, we're drowning in email. What can we do about that? Things of that sort.
Okay. So how did this company start? Obviously, you're solving a very unique problem, your target market. How did you start? When did you start this business and why?
So we started in April of 2021, and it happened kind of opportunistically, actually. I was in my last role as head of product at a technology company in LA that was focused on the video space. And we had taken funding from a family office. And basically one of the stipulations of that funding was you have to come help some of our other portfolio companies with their technology needs and efforts. And after pulling in that funding, I very quickly found myself in this kind of SWAT team role where I would be deployed in some of the other portfolio companies to help them figure out what they needed, how to solve problems using technology, et cetera. And after doing that for about a year, my founders and a couple of the folks from the family office tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You seem to be pretty excited about this. Do you want to go pursue it?" And that was the birth of Apollo 21.
All right. So I always like to hear about how everybody structures their company. You said your founders. How many founders do you have?
Sorry, the founders was in reference to the previous company. I am the sole founder of Apollo 21. I have a couple of partners in the business who, one of whom has been around since the beginning, the other of whom I've worked with for years and joined us a little bit later on. And we have one or two other folks that make up effectively the core team. And from there, we scale up and scale down based on what projects we have going on. We've been as big as about 30, and usually we sit in the 10 to 12 range, depending on how busy we are.
Okay. And how do you divide and conquer from a leadership level? Is there an area that you focus on, or are you just growing the business at this point? How does that all work?
Yeah, I have a head of product and design who runs product and design across all of our projects. I have a head of engineering who handles all things technology, and I come from a product and design background as well, so I lean in those areas, but I try not to step on toes when I do that because Calvin, my head of product and design, is amazing and I love him dearly. For the most part, I'm focused on growing the business, looking at the strategic side of what we're doing, looking for new customers, things like that.
Okay. And what's your growth strategy? How are you finding these new customers? What marketing sales tactics are you investing in? How are you structuring all that?
So we were lucky in that we managed to grow organically for the first couple of years, primarily through referral and word of mouth and by working our network. And we're finally getting to the point where we're starting to have exhausted that resource. And so we're in the process right now of exploring what the most effective means to grow a business of this type might look like. And so we've been experimenting with some cold outbound. I've been doing a ton of work on LinkedIn, both to establish the brand and to establish my personal brand, and then also to begin connecting with other folks in the space, folks who are focused on innovation or who seem like they might be interested in the types of offerings that we have. And then we're always open to unique partnerships and things like that as well. So I talk to a lot of other founders and folks in the innovation space, just looking for opportunities where we can work together or refer work to one another if, something fits somebody else's business better than ours, for example, or vice versa. And that's what we've been focused on lately, and we'll see how long that lasts and what it takes to go from there.
Yeah. So one of the marketing challenges I've seen in businesses like yours that are pretty unique is that I'm not saying you have to like ignore search completely, but search isn't as much of a powerhouse as it is for, let's say, a carpet cleaning company, right? Somebody types in carpet cleaning company, you pop up. What you do is a lot more intricate. So you're probably having to look more at marketing to a demographic, getting that thought leadership out there, and being able to say, this is the future of being able to build awesome, innovative products within your existing company, and we're helping you do it. And that's not necessarily something people are searching for. Am I barking up the right tree there?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think that we do some work in terms of SEO and making sure that we are discoverable. And then, of course, a lot of our work, as you pointed out, revolves around thought leadership and offering what we believe is a unique perspective on the world of innovation and product development and venture building. And we do find that we get some traffic from folks that are reading our articles, looking at our case studies. We've released a number of white papers that offer a pretty detailed deep dive into at least our view of the space. All of that being said, you're absolutely right. There's no comparison to, I need my carpets cleaned. Give me somebody that will do that. And unfortunately, we're just not carpet cleaners.
All right. I think you're building something that can scale a little bit beyond that.
I'm hoping so. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about innovation. Everybody's got their own idea of what this word means. And I'm sure you have clients that can go, we want to do something cool and innovative. One of your offerings is you deliver innovation. So talk a little bit about how you approach that word and how you bring that change to your customers.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Innovation is one of those tough words, and it's become overused in a lot of ways. Every company is throwing around innovation, innovative, whatever. Every company has their internal efforts that they claim are exemplary of what makes them innovative. And what we find is that a lot of those activities don't move the needle. They exist to fulfill on the need to be innovative and the ability to say to the world that we are innovating. But when you really start pulling back the layers, what you find is that they're topical efforts in that they aren't impacting the way that the company is operating. You're not impacting the metrics that companies are using to define what growth looks like and that will set them up for innovation. And so in our world, innovation has to move beyond that kind of theatrical moment and into something more tangible. We work with our customers very heavily on customer development, learning from customers, interviewing them, understanding what the pain points are, and using those learnings as an opportunity to then ideate and articulate what a new product might look like, what a new revenue stream might look like, what an entirely new business model might look like that still fits that company's offering, or as I like to say, what they have licensed to publish. Something, it has to fit in the realm of what that company is known for so that your customers will believe that you can be innovative in that space. And a lot of that work comes through research and engagement with customers. And then the other side of it is really cultural, is helping organizations understand that the way that they measure innovation or the way that they measure how their business is performing with an eye towards innovation is probably different than what they're used to. And so if you look at the way that companies have evolved, what you find is that most companies begin as a startup, of course, and are looking to disrupt some sort of industry. They bring something new to market that gathers attention. They find product market fit and they go, oh my God, this is working. We need to double down on this. And then they do it again and again. And it's not wrong by any stretch, but what you end up with is a company that is highly geared towards efficiently executing that one thing, minimizing risk around that one thing, and protecting capital around that one thing. And the idea of being an executionally focused company that is aiming primarily for metrics that demonstrate shareholder return, metrics that demonstrate quarterly growth, etc., puts you at direct odds with the idea of innovation, because innovation inherently is a learning experience. It is inherently something that does not return on your investment into exploration and learning and experimentation, at least not within the short-term confines that most companies are looking for those returns today. And so you end up in this kind of tug of war of, do we want to execute extraordinarily efficiently and save every penny we possibly can, or do we want to expend some of that capital, take on a little bit of risk and a little bit of inefficiency so that we can discover what might come next?
I feel like I have 20 different follow-ups, so I'll start.
Fire away.
So how do you delineate the ideation of the innovative idea with a customer? Because, and the reason I'm asking this is because when you're inside of a company in the day to day, it's really hard to think innovatively, but it's
Yes.
really easy for all of us to go, what Target should do. So do you, when you're working with a customer, do they have an idea of what it is they're looking to do? Or are they, we got some outside eyes to see where we might be able to take this?
Customers come in both forms for us. So some come to us because they have an idea that they want to pursue. They have some inkling of a pain point that they think that they can step in and solve for their existing customers or for a customer base that is just beyond their existing customers so that they can expand into a new market. And then others come to us and say, we know that what we're doing won't provide us the longevity that we want, but we really don't know where to go from here. And we have worked successfully with both types of customers, but the process ends up looking a little bit different. So if a customer has an idea, then it gives us a jumping off point. And of course, we can dig in and begin to evaluate how it resonates for their customers. We can work on customer research and prototyping to begin to mock up what that thing might be so that we can determine whether or not it solves the need. Whereas if a company just wants to pursue innovation but doesn't really know where to start, you have to pull the starting line way back here and go, okay, let's explore what the opportunities are. And so some of that comes to life through the customer development process that I mentioned a moment ago. Lots of great ideas that can come from customers who are saying, oh, I really like your product, but I wish it did this. Or, hey, you guys do this really well, and my problem sits just beyond that. Do you think you could expand and account for that? And then the other thing is, to your point, these companies have hundreds, thousands of people working for them who, even if they're not focused on going about their day-to-day with the moment of how can I be innovative as I write this email, whatever, because that's the things that you do when you go through the motions. But if you stop and ask folks for their ideas, you will find a gold mine of incredible ideas from within your own organization. And so it's really just a question of putting out a call for entries, for lack of better terms.
Nice, nice. So one of the things you talked about is looking at innovation to solve a problem. And before we started, we both rolled our eyes at the idea of AI because we all have to talk about it all the time, even though we don't care. And the idea of innovation just to innovate, right, versus innovate to make an impact. Because you can really, anybody can make a bunch of cool stuff with the right budget. But at the end of the day, what does that do? What does it do? And so when you're working with a customer, do you ever find yourself where they're like, oh, this would be a fun idea? And you have to go, yes, but what outcome are we expecting from this?
Of course. And that's part of the beauty of the process that I'm describing, is that it really gives you the opportunity for those moments of, oh, wouldn't it be cool if, to come to life? And yes, you have to then ground them in, okay, which of our business goals does that amazing thing align to? Or what customer pain point does that amazing thing help us solve? And to your point, companies can be innovative. They can build amazing, innovative things. But if they don't align to the business, then what's the purpose? And so you have to ground the innovation work in strategy that aligns to the business. And otherwise, you're just either A, starting a new business, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if you think that amazing thing that you came up with, people will buy, or you just need to get used to throwing out the baby with the bathwater and going, you know what, that might be a great idea, but it's just not right for us.
Okay. I want to ask a little bit about your entrepreneur journey. So you're the founder of this company. Talk to me now. Is this the first company that you've led, or what? How did we get here?
No, this is not the first company. I started my career in advertising, very quickly realized that it didn't. That got into the world of innovation consulting back in about 2007, which was a really interesting time to be exploring the space because it was around the birth of the iPhone. Social media was becoming highly established. We were seeing a ton of change in the way that technology enabled brands to interact with customers and to provide value for customers. And so that was really the turning point in my career, was the 5 years that I spent at a company called Poke that was focused on that type of work, and was also really my introduction to the world of startups and entrepreneurship. And so coming out of Poke in 2012, I started my first company, which I built with my then girlfriend, now wife, which was a company designed to help couples who had been through the online dating ringer figure out how to keep dating one another after they had found the one, if you will. So that was a lot of fun. And then I bounced around a number of startups in the coming years. We explored a couple of other companies. I have a couple of side companies that I run just almost for fun and as I call them my science experiment zones. I have an e-commerce company, for example, that I don't make a killing off of by any stretch, but it earns a little bit of revenue, and it's the place where I can go, I wonder what would happen if we, I don't know, did this, and I can go and play and experiment and take bigger risks because I'm not quite as worried about the stature of that brand. I've been through the process of starting a few different things now.
You seem very driven by your own curiosity. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's not the first time that somebody has said that to me. I think that's highly accurate. I get to a point where I go, I really want to know how this works or what would happen if. And often I have to go through it and experiment and try in order to get that itch out of the way.
So you've been around the block. You were at the innovation consulting company. You've got some side gigs. Talk to me when you're starting Apollo and you're like, okay, these are the mistakes we're not going to make. I've seen it out. Like, here's what we're not going to do. What are some of those?
The biggest one for me was how the company was structured and how quickly we're willing to grow. And having come from a creative services background and a services-oriented background, one of the things that I knew from day one was that I've seen way too many companies that get a new client, hire a bunch of people, at some point lose that or another client, and you're left with 10, 15, 20 mouths that you need to feed. And so you get stuck in this cycle of, oh no, I need to pay these guys salaries, et cetera. And so you start looking for any work that will pay the bills. And that's where you hit this sort of downhill slope of, we're taking on work that we don't really want to be doing, but we're keeping the team together, which is a good thing. And I certainly respect folks that want to keep their people paid and employed and all of that. But I decided that I would take a different approach. And so I grew Apollo 21 very carefully. I was highly considered about everybody who I brought on as an employee and still am. And the result of that is that we have a core leadership team of about 5 people, and then we scale up based on the needs of any given project. And so I'm fortunate that I have found a resource partner who exists purely to supply technology folks, engineers, designers, et cetera. And given the great relationship that we've built with them, it has put us in a position where we can go, oh, we've got a new client. By next week, I can have a full software engineering team with designers, et cetera, built and ready to go. And we just start rolling. And it's a nuance because often those people will work with us for a year at a time. They're people that we thoroughly enjoy working with. But we know at the end of the day that they are contractors, and there is no inherent expectation that we are going to fight to keep them around if things get difficult. And so it gives us the benefit of scaling as needed based on what we have going on. And as a result, we've been as big as about 30, as small as about 8, and it just depends on what we have going on.
That's I think that's really important. Really responsible expectation setting.
Yes.
That's really helpful to everybody involved because they can still be a part of your mission and understand what their role is, but not feel like they're getting kicked to the curb if the work just isn't there.
Exactly. And of course, we come back to them when there is new work. We have built a great relationship that is ongoing, but to your point, there's an understanding there.
Mm-hmm. So I like what you were talking about, that really big client, right? And I think having that big client that takes up so much of the agency bandwidth is there's this fallacy that you need it. And I think the thing that people don't realize is the emotional toll that it takes because the stakes are so high. And,
yes.
I remembered years ago, we had a very large client that's probably somewhere between 20 to 30% of revenue. And they went through, some changes, and all of a sudden it became clear, oh, wait a minute,
they're going away.
But the marketing company is going to get cut.
Yes.
And it was like this big bad wolf that was like terrifying. Oh my God. And then they were gone, and then life moved on. And now I don't have a client that's over 5% of revenue. And I don't have nearly as much stress because I don't have a big bad wolf in my life. And so, yeah, if there's one little tip for the service-based businesses out there listening, like your biggest client doesn't need to be too big. There's some emotional highs and lows on that.
That's an amazing point to call out. I too learned that the hard way.
Right? Fail up, kids. Fail up.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm always interested in with entrepreneurs is structuring this work-life balance. And everybody does it different, right? So how do you approach your week, understanding all of your responsibilities, your life family, your work family, all of that? What's your approach?
I'm probably a terrible person to ask this question, Austin, because work-life balance, I might even go so far as to say it doesn't exist in my world. And I'm fine with that because I understand it. Don't have kids, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at that. So that is not a time commitment that I need to be concerned with. And I'm fortunate in that my wife also works in the industry and so is highly understanding of the ups and downs of what we go through and also does some consulting work of her own. And so she knows exactly what I'm dealing with. And so the reality is that we tend to throw ourselves into the work that's in front of us. And it's funny, I mentioned that I have a couple of little side businesses, and in a way, those really are my hobby. My brain revolves around how do I build ventures? How do I build things that people want? How do I create products that are interesting? And it is pervasive in a lot of the things that I do. To give you a concrete example, we were living in California a few years ago and bought an SUV for some off-road camping, adventuring stuff. And that became the basis for my side business. I now run an e-commerce company that designs and sells accessories for off-road camping vehicles. And it's literally just a side gig that I do for fun, but it aligns to how my brain works. I enjoy camping. We get out and go camping. I start thinking to myself, I really wish the truck had blank in the back. And then I get an itch in my brain and I go, I want this. Now I need to go create it. And I've been through the entrepreneurial rigor enough to go, if I want this, I bet somebody else does. And so my brain just immediately goes to not only how can I make the thing that I want, but how can I make the thing that I want and then provide it to other people so that it becomes a business and gives me another experimentation zone. And so work-life balance revolves around the complete imbalance of my turning even my hobbies into something that isn't necessarily a hobby anymore.
All right, I got to ask you some questions about that offline. I just got back from a great camping trip in Yosemite a couple of weeks ago. So.
Oh, amazing! We were there a couple of years ago.
Yeah, a wonderful spot. I do like your answer because I feel like you know yourself, right? Like yes. You have the itch and you want to scratch it, and so your work-life balance is that when life gives you something to work on, you like to work on it. And, yes. And I think that's great. And especially in the service-based businesses, people love that. Now, knowing that you're like that, how do you set your boundaries with your customers so that you are the one who owns the terms of how much you're working and when and not then?
That's a really good question that as an outcome of what I've said. So I appreciate that. How do I do that? I allow my customers to dictate it to an extent, but I also find that one of our core principles at Apollo 21 is relentless collaboration. We collaborate extremely deeply with our clients. We effectively embed ourselves into their teams. And so the result is that we tend to get to know them pretty well. We meet and understand them as people as opposed to just business clients, which sit at the other side of an email, for example. And to be quite frank, the result that I find is that our clients tend to be reasonably respectful of our time, and we create a relationship where we know if somebody's emailing or calling at 7:00 on a Friday evening because they need something, we can usually trust that it is genuinely an emergency in their world. And that's where that relentless collaboration comes in. If a client comes to me at 7:00 on a Friday or whatever it is, a Saturday morning, because they have a true need that is going to impact their business, I want to be there to help them. And beyond that, I guess the other way on that street is when a client emails us and says, hey, we need this, and we say no, or no, we can't get to it till Monday, we've also established enough of a trust and rapport that we know they will tell us if it's an emergency, and if not, they're usually pretty understanding and respectful of our time.
And it always ebbs and flows, just different types of
Of
customers.
course.
We do mostly B2B, and when I'm being humorous, people are like, oh, really? Why not B2C? And I was like, I don't know. I've never had a problem hanging out with my family the day after Thanksgiving. My holidays are pretty nice. And so there definitely are those professions though, where to excel, you do have to be on at times that are not conventional. And there are those moments, especially product launches, things like that in your world, that I'm sure things get really intense. And there's the camaraderie that comes with when you go into the trenches together for those moments.
I was just about to say that. Yes, when you go through the trenches with somebody, you come out the other end with a certain respect, understanding, and view of how that person acts under pressure. And to me, that's where some of the best relationships are built.
Yeah, my team last year, we had to do a CRM migration that essentially required like 6 people, all hands on deck. The sales team from this company left on a Friday. When they came back Monday morning, they were going to have a new fully built CRM. And the way I kept telling my team, I was like, look at it like a heist film. Like they're gone, and now we got to do all the work because they're going to show up on Monday. It's, whoa, what happened? And so I kept calling it the heist. I was trying, and I was trying to tell her, I was like, listen, this is one weekend of your life. You're not going to love it, but I promise you, when you guys do this and you ace it, you're going to look back on it and go, it's really cool. And sure enough, at our next quarterly, it was like, oh, best of the last quarter. And person leading the migration she was like, easily the migration. Like, I know it was a pain, but it was awesome. And like the work we did was great, and everybody was happy in the end. And just goes to that balance of like fulfillment versus happiness, right?
Yes.
So tough. Happiness is easy.
Yes. Yeah. And the experience that you gain from it, there's something about operating under pressure, especially when the outcome is successful, that gives you confidence in your team, your partners, and your own capabilities that, in my experience, serve you as you move forward, because you know what it's like to go through the ringer and how to do it better the next time, that you're capable of it. And it really, for me, I find those moments grounding, because I can always look back at it and go, it can't be any worse than that, so let's do it.
All right, Danny, last question. I'll get you out of here on this. What is your plan or your structure? How are you going to scale Apollo 21, let's say, over the next 3 to 5 years?
If I had the answer to that, I would be clairvoyant. But my goal, at least, is to continue growing our engagement, hopefully with some larger organizations that we can have a real impact on and can help establish their operations to be something beyond what they are today. So I mentioned one of our operating principles. We have 3 in total, but a second one is we expect our clients to outgrow us. And I think it is a highly unusual perspective, especially for a company like ours. But what I've come to realize is that if you try to hold on too hard to the clients that you have, especially beyond the point where they're ready to begin operationalizing the things that you've worked with them on for themselves, ultimately you can end up ruining what might be an otherwise great relationship. And so to bring that back to your question, Austin, I would love to get to the point where at least once every year we have a client that says to us, guys, this has been amazing. We need to do it for ourselves now. And we, Apollo 21, want to be there to help get them to that point. And we have built our operations around that inflection moment of amazing. Here, can we help you build the team internally? Can we help you find the right people that will take over leadership? What can we do to make that transition successful? Because if that client goes on and does something amazing on their own, I don't want to say we can take credit for it. There's a great sort of sense of accomplishment in it that you help them get to that point. And so my hope for growth and scale is that we can help our clients outgrow us.
Yeah, I think what you're showing there is by, let's say, deprioritizing immediate revenue, is that one, you really care about your customer success, which is definitely going to work in the long run. But two, if what you do and what you inject into their company is so contagious that they want to build a department around it, then what the influence that you have and what you care most about and why you started a company is really
Alive and well.
out entire companies. That's awesome. Danny, thank you so much for being here. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. And where can the people find you?
Easiest place to find us is Apollo21, the number 2, number 1.io. I am personally active on social media, usually is blah, blah, blah / among many. Apollo21, of course, is also active on socials. And if you happen to be in the New York area, I run a monthly founders dinner and a monthly innovators dinner where we actually sit down in person and have a meal and get to know one another. If you're interested in that, please give me a shout.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds great.
They're a ton of fun. In fact, I just had one a couple of nights ago and it was such a great experience.
All right. I'll look out for that next time I go to New York. I try and get up there at least once a year. And
oh, yeah, please do.
Those times I'm just inviting myself.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. You'll be
awesome.
More than welcome.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Danny.
Thank you. Appreciate it.